was it's time to get ready, get set, and escape with me. So, people have been beating to death how much they even disliked to, or even hated Mass Effect Andromeda. Myself personally, I grew to love the game. And honestly, at first, I was kind of disappointed with it, but that was my first playthrough. A short little story before we go into the reaction part of the video. My first impression of the game was after playing Mass Effect 3, going through the whole trilogy, and kind of being let down with that ending. Wanted to see more of what happened at the end. And then years later we get Mass Effect Andromeda. Seeing that it actually connects to the original trilogy, I was hyped. I wanted to play through it and see how it connected. So unfortunately, on my part, I rushed through a lot of the side content, focusing on the main story, and by the end of it, I felt let down. So next thing what I did was when I replayed the game, I made sure to fully immerse myself and realize and tell myself that it'll come, the full connections, once I do all the side content, because there were things on the sides that connected to that I didn't realize before. So once I did all the side content I could, really spoke to all the characters more in depth, really focused more on the relationships and all that, I really found out that this game was great. It's a game that I love. And while the trilogy for me was like up to here, Andromeda's right up to here, I could say the same for the first Mass Effect game, because Andromeda to me was a game that was built not as a standalone. It was meant to be a trilogy where it could really flesh out the rest of its content and not be rushed like the previous game was, because of their whole engine fiasco that they had, the gaming engine fiasco that they had. So to top that off too, yeah, there were things that they kind of messed up on still. One of the two biggest things I didn't like about the game was the bad guy. That was my dog. He hit the camera. He's trying to jump on my lap. The bad guy. And there was one other thing my dog just distracted me. I can't remember what it was. But I'll leave it at that. I'll probably pick it up as we go into the video here. But that's my thing. I think people hated this game a bit too much because of, I think they were still butthurt because of the Mass Effect 3 fiasco. And by fiasco, I mean they wanted more from the ending, and that was the only bad thing about the game. So I think that's what it really was. I mean, the game isn't perfect. Andromeda wasn't perfect, but there was a lot of good things going on for it. So I think with that, we're gonna go into the video and see what culture thinks as far as what could have saved Mass Effect Andromeda, and then I'll go into my thoughts as well, because they'll probably help me remember things I wanted to talk about too that I couldn't remember because my dog distracted me. So without further ado, let's escape. Syncing the video now. Bum 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 bum.
Hey everybody, welcome to What Culture Gaming. I'm Scott, and
that's a catchy intro.
I was having a little bit of a reminisce on Mass Effect, because that series used to mean a hell of a lot, and for a lot of us,
it still means a lot, man.
We grew up with it. Mass Effect was one of the best sci-fi franchises on the market, and at a time was pretty much rivaling Star Wars or Star Trek in terms of being one of the most detailed lores and mythologies ever put together. In terms of the state of Mass Effect right now, there's still kind of so much promise, but following the end of Mass Effect 3 and the disastrous Mass Effect Andromeda, Mass Effect is just in stasis.
Oh,
there are so many
great
characters, just a phenomenally rich sci-fi world, including everything from how individual bullets for guns are made to race relations between Turians and Quarians.
Exactly.
It's kind of strange then that even despite Mass Effect 3 being a notable dud and one of the most disappointing and just gut-wrenchingly bad video game endings of all time, EA went back to the drawing board alongside BioWare, and Mass Effect Andromeda was what we got back. It's kind of strange then that BioWare played it so safe when revisiting everything. Now, Kotaku did publish a very detailed report on how this came to be, infighting between studios and rushed production deadlines prioritizing multiplayer, but it doesn't change the fact that Mass Effect Andromeda was a monumental letdown.
That's why they shouldn't have gone with EA.
Fans and myself have occasionally gone back to look at how things could have gone, and I think I've got a far more fan-pleasing, all-round satisfying vision in mind. This is how BioWare could have saved Mass Effect Andromeda. So the Andromeda Initiative is formed to take humanity away from the Milky Way and into the Andromeda Galaxy by the billionaire G.N. Garson. It's just kind of handy that this is underway right when Mass Effect 3 concludes. And though the game does show that Garrus' father Castus informed Alec Ryder of the Reaper's invasion after wheels were in motion, it doesn't exactly make the timeline feel any less coincidental. So let's make it so that the people we play as are a crew of people actually believing what Shepard's been telling them about across the last 3 games. It directly means that we can play as people that reflect the opinions and, vocal talking points that we've all had on forums and social media, and basically the way that we've started to refer to Mass Effect since then can be a playable narrative through the game. Basically, we all need to believe Shepard's past warnings of the Reapers, and we're fleeing the Milky Way to survive. Next up,
that makes sense. That would be dope.
The ending of Mass Effect 3. Everyone knows that the end of Mass Effect 3 is one of the most disappointing and talked about endings in entertainment history. The only way to move forward is not to ignore it, but address it head on. Ignoring it only cemented it in history as a true mistake. So let's make the Andromeda Initiative a crew of people who followed Shepard's exploits across the original trilogy. They maybe heard about his visions on Vermeer, believed his warnings about the Reapers, and signed up to do right by a commander that was ultimately ignored by the Council. You might have someone singing Shepard's praises.
That's crazy. They never really touched on that. I just realized that.
Call out the bullshit of space magic, the rumors of a star child, perhaps even a joke or discussion on the indoctrination theory and how unbelievable or plausible it all feels. Especially in retrospect. Giving the fans this level of agency within the narrative is something that The Witcher 3 pretty much started with, letting you reframe past events of the games by picking specific dialogue choices, and this doubles as being a way for the fans to essentially directly talk to the developers. They get to put down some of their thoughts as to how they wanted the ending to go, and fans get to respond in tow. I guarantee that going down this route means that any future conversation on the end of Mass Effect 3 would always then be met with, yeah, but that thing that they did in Mass Effect Andromeda, that was cool. Next up, introduce the Archon's experiments and clarify intentions immediately. So the Archon is just bad. He's like this big walking slab of evil.
I couldn't stand the Archon.
Just, like grey. There's hardly any sort of like real thought being put into his agency in the galaxy itself. And although there are hints that he's experimenting on the Milky Way races to try and find this perfect specimen, that's not the drive or the reason that he exists overall. He's just big, evil, booming, like alien dude that you need to defeat along the way.
Your typical bad guy everyone's seen 1,000 times.
Being this like crazy scientist guy that's trying to perfect the ultimate specimen, that makes him kind of evil in this whole, dissecting what you love and respect kind of way. That at least makes him more interesting as an individual, as someone who's thinking through his evil intentions. This totally could have been the Archon's entire purpose. He's pretty much just looking at different races arriving in Andromeda and seeing how much they serve his scientific agenda. That's creepy and cool, and way more worthwhile than just evil dude is evil because evil. Next, make Ryder's memories integral to the story or lose them entirely. So in Andromeda, Ryder has a completely optional tie to a series of memories that detail his or her backstory, fleshing out Father Alec Ryder as someone who struggled to balance his work with his home life. Ultimately, these sequences reveal the assumed dead Mother Ryder is actually still alive, albeit in cryostasis. It all points to the real problem with how malleable Ryder is as a character, which doubles as a BioWare problem. Too often they want to write specific characters, which was the ultimate downfall of Mass Effect 3. They pretty much turned Shepard into a specific character who was sad about a child dying, even though you might have played him as a total psychopath beforehand. And it means that this approach neither takes the box of the original trilogy's DIY approach, nor anything remotely satisfying as far as storytelling goes. You can't have both. It has to be one or the other, and BioWare need to realize that. This brings me on to the next point. Let us save Ryder's mother. Speaking of all these memories again, the biggest reveal alongside the fact that Mother Ryder is alive is that there's actually a way
DLC was cancelled. That could have been
It turns out that Alec Ryder actually placed Ellen into cryosleep under the assumption that a cure could be created at some point in the future. It's this idea that actually points you to the cryosleep pod in the first place, and you get to have a admittedly terribly animated sequence where both of the Ryder twins get to finally talk to their mother again. The facial animation's barely there. It's really not good, but the meat of that conversation points to the idea that, Mother Ryder can be...
It doesn't help when you animate your character like that, when you create your character like that. What the heck, man?
The thing that you bring back and the reason that you want to play as Ryder, because you're, resurrecting your dead mom. All of this brings me back to overarching stuff, and the next big point is that we needed a whole ton of new aliens, technology, and environmental design. Okay, seriously, how do BioWare think that it's worth going to a new galaxy? You're going to go down that whole art direction thing, and the only thing that makes it into the game that's, symbolizes or, points to a new galaxy of potential is some floating rocks. That's all there is. Alongside this, there are literally only 4 new races, of which only 2 have faces, a smattering of planets ranging from deserts to
they're bipedal
and ice planets.
They could have went so unique with this.
Outside the box visuals as beam weapons, lasers, Now, all of this is obviously a huge bunch of stuff to fix, but the general approach to a new galaxy should have felt as much. The Ket will occasionally turn into missed versions of themselves, which is, cool, but where's the actual art direction that showcases the approach across the board? Alien ships should have moved and flown in a way that breaks our understanding of physics. Enemies maybe didn't walk on two legs and could have spoken with a mouth that was anywhere other than their face. I mean, come on, this is something that even No Man's Sky did at launch in 2016 when the whole world hated it. And number one, the biggest thing, somewhat obviously, fix the animations. Now, this is the ultimate
they were rushed
thing that people on the development
what is that in the background?
But,
what is that?
They should have had more time to perfect the vision that they were putting out. But overall,
get that away,
man.
No
real excuse or justification
what the
for
heck?
glitches that look
what
like
is that?
Back to the development side, and I do understand the reality that it was Mass Effect 3's multiplayer team that were actually given full reign of the whole game. So they basically had to go from designing combat scenarios to trying to make a full Mass Effect game. But again,
why would they
you've got
that?
characters walking around like they kind of need to go to the toilet, and the general.
I've never seen a glitch like that before.
Just,
Oh!
I mean, a lot of us who followed the project know that after a few months of being on retail, they did put out a gargantuan patch that fixed the vast majority of the faces, or at least made them look a bit better. But at launch, this thing was a laughing stock, and one of the reasons that a lot of people are so negative on the project
who ran into this glitch?
The first impression was just so bad. From ape-like arm-dragging walking animations to contorted faces, blank stares during emotional moments, and characters straight up levitating out of frame mid-conversation.
I've never seen these glitches before.
Lack of polish across the board that at least makes someone like Bethesda know that it's not just them. The biggest thing that EA and BioWare needed to get right, the biggest thing that could have saved Mass Effect Andromeda, is this first impression and this level of polish. It just needed more time in the oven, and it should never have been churned out. So with all that in mind, let me know what you think down in the comments below. As a huge Mass Effect fan, I always want to try and give the games the benefit of the doubt. Let me know what you think. Check out the What Culture Gaming podcast too. I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I'll catch you soon. Bye.
There we go. Okay, so going to that, thankfully this guy is a fan. I kept saying he's a good fan. I don't know what that was up about, but he brought home some really good points. The animation, obviously, but they fixed a lot of it in one of the patches that they did, and it didn't make it perfect, at least as perfect as it could be, but because there were still some moments where it's like, why is your expression so blank? But when something cataclysmic just happened, but they still made it look where it was pretty good. I feel like whenever there's a bad guy nowadays, every so often, just a bad guy who's just there to be bad is cool. But when it's in a story like this, I feel like there needs to be a story behind him why he's even like this. And that's, for a story like this, especially if you're going to kill him off like that so easily, you should have like a deeper story with him more up front, where maybe he's sick and he's experimenting on these things to make him feel better. Maybe his race is dying. Like, right off the top of my head, that would have been so dope. Maybe his race is dying, and because of that, they're trying to experiment on the other races and take good things from them, implement them together, and make them stronger and be able to fight off this sickness. So right off the bat, there's something right there. Even if it's just for like his... maybe not the whole, it doesn't even have to be the whole race in case they want to do something different in the long run. It could be just that sector, his patrol of enemies, his patrol of people that are like that because of where they went to a weird planet or something. Maybe the Scourge did it to them or something like that. That would have been cool. And he just is the type of person who wants to do this. He wants to save his race. And he doesn't care he doesn't care if he has to sacrifice other people, because it's either them or them. So it's survival of the fittest. That is something that you could really feel sorry for the character. I would have really been sad for the character if he was like that. And even if he was to the point where he would apologize, but he has to do what's best for his family. If he wasn't like if he didn't feel like he was a... what's it called? He didn't feel like a dictator, but more like someone who really cared. So that would have been really great. I would have loved seeing an Archon character like that. Connecting it more to the... I think I'll end it after this part here, because there was a lot of things, and I would love to hear you all's comments on this factor as well. But I think the last thing I'm going to end on is the fact that it lacked the connections that we were hoping for. And that's why games like Epic Games, that's why their company with Fortnite, that's why their game is doing so well. They're listening to the fans upright and making updates as they go. That's what Mass Effect 3 did with the extended cut. That's what they did with all the multiplayer. They were listening to the fans and adding all this stuff. And it doesn't have to even be after the game's done. Just ask your fans, hey, what would you like to see in the game? How does this sound? You know, you don't have to give off a bunch of stuff to leak the whole game out. Just ask certain things and boom. Bring in some of the fans to work for you and do it that way. Bring in the community, involve the community a lot more, and you will be so much better off than a lot of companies who don't do it well. So what he said there too with, you know, them connecting more to the series, talking about I was actually really surprised that, I mean, I know they touched on this at the end, that the whole, basically the whole thing about this expedition was to avoid the Reapers. I was glad they actually extended that. Like, that was the major reason. And what was his name? The writer's father, Alec. I think it was Alec Ryder. He funded the expedition because of that. That was great, but I feel like there should have been more people who were along for that ride besides him and just like the broker who did it. It would have been cool if there were big rumors going around. There were people that were just like talking about it, and there was even like a group who separated themselves because they didn't want to be a part of technology anymore because of the whole Reaper thing. You know, stuff like that would have been really cool to see. And I think I'll leave it on that. I would love to hear you guys' comments on it if you want to talk about it more in depth. This was a really good video. I'm glad I reacted to it to talk about it more. And it's great to see that Mass Effect isn't done, because it'd be stupid to leave it like it is and to not go back to it because they're scared. I mean, even with Anthem, hopefully Anthem connects to Mass Effect. I would love to see it. I'm sure it's going to be its own IP, but it'd be great to see some kind of connections. So I think there was one other thing I wanted to say, but I can't remember what it was. It was going to connect to that, but I guess I'll leave it at that for now. If you guys have if you guys enjoyed this video, do be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out the original link in the description below to What Culture's channel, What Culture Gaming. Check out their original video. Let them know I sent you. Support the official release. They do great content. And until the wind hits our sails yet again, I would love to continue talking about this with you all. So let me know what you all thought about this video, and if you have anything else you would like to see in the future. Oh, the biggest thing too, it would have been so simpler to have more variety of aliens. Like, Discovery Channel does that stuff all the time. You can just, like, I get the whole bipedal thing with the one race, and how the other one was bipedal because of the connection, but they could have done it more. They could have just done so much more with it. It's the potential. I would have loved to see more variety with the aliens. But anyway, until the wind hits our sails yet again, I will see you all in the next escape. Later days.